It's with great pleasure I welcome Brian Goulet from the Goulet Pen Company to PR Warrior. How are you, Brian?
I'm doing fantastic, Trevor. Thanks for having me on.
No, thank you for being here. I know it's a busy time of the year for you, and gosh, we haven't spoken for, I reckon it's well over 3 years.
I think so,
And
yeah.
you came onto my radar, and I did a case study on you because I saw what you were doing, and I was blown away at the time, and I wrote an article on it, and you dropped by the blog and made some nice comments, and we sort of then took it further, had an interview, and so given every year in digital's kind of like 7 years, so it's probably been 21 years since we caught up.
Yeah, it
Um,
feels about like that, yeah.
you're just going from strength to strength, and I just want to, if I can say it, and I know you're a very humble man, and you might not want me to say it, but I think you're one of the best content marketers and social media marketers that I've ever seen, and I'm in this space
Wow.
daily, and I'm looking at it. So I'd love to
Thank you.
unpack a bit of that, and because I mean, you don't come from a communications or a PR or marketing background, yet you've
Mhm.
managed to achieve so much success through your business, but a lot of that is fueled by social and content. So let's rip into that, because probably let's start. How old's the company? It was bootstrapped with you and your wife Rachel to
Mhm.
where it is now. Can you just give us a bit of an overview and what happens at Goulet Pens?
Sure, yeah. I mean, for anybody that hasn't heard about us before, I imagine a good portion of your audience is not that familiar with us. So I'm happy to recap there. So we've been in business for just about 7 years now. Started out just my wife and I. We are an e-commerce business that focus on selling fountain pens. So it's a very niche market. And back in the early days, it was just her and I in our dining room. And we had almost no money. We had a new baby. We were trying to get this business off the ground. So traditional methods of marketing, what was traditional back in 2009, I guess, paid advertising and things like that wasn't really an option for
Not an
us because we
option.
had no money and we had no, formal marketing training of any kind. But we had some experience doing social media just through our personal connections, having kind of grown up with Facebook in college back when it was just for college students.
Yep.
That's when it came out for us. So we had some experience with social media, and it kind of was the only avenue that we had. So we focused on niche forums and blogs and things like that were in our industry in the fountain pen kind of world, and just kind of networked and connected through there. And as we got a little more sophisticated, that was working for us. So we just spent more time and created content. As we would learn about products, we would then put out videos about the products that we were selling, and it just seemed to work really well. And then we got engagement through the videos and the blogs and things that we were doing.
Yep.
And then that gave us input into the products that we should carry. And then we would carry more products that were similar and then put out content around those products and get more feedback. And that's the cycle that we've been in for the last 7 years.
Wow. And so how many people now? How many employees?
Well, it kind of changes because we're in like a seasonal kind of structure right
Yeah.
now, but we're hovering right around 43 at the moment.
Wow. That's that's
So
that's that's good steady growth, isn't it? And
it
and
is.
so in terms of content when you started, it was just you and Rachel doing it.
Mhm.
And how big would your team be now? Because social and content, when I talk social, it's content, and obviously the two are
Yes.
inextricably linked. Have you got a team that helps on, or
Yes.
does everyone sort of pitch in? How does that work?
Yeah, so we do have an intentional team. We call it our media team,
Yep.
which includes we have two photographers, a dedicated videographer, and then we have three what we call community coordinators. So they're the ones that are helping to produce content, write blogs, things like that. But they're also responsible for engagement on all the different platforms that we have. And then we have one manager for that team, in addition to myself and Rachel, my wife, who we will also dip in there quite a bit and help out, though we're not officially, on that team full time. So really it's, 8 or 9 of us that are contributing on a pretty regular basis.
So 8 or 9 with about 7 full time on it.
That's right.
Wow.
It's quite a team, yeah, which for our size company is a pretty solid dedication to it. But that's rather than investing in a lot of pay-per-click advertising and banner ads and things like that, we do very little of any of that.
Yeah.
It's mainly producing content. So we've just basically taken our entire marketing allocation and just put it all into our people and to producing content.
Excellent. And what I've really noticed, and this is obviously as you go along the journey, you learn, and then you bring in other people who have got experience. And, I
Hmm.
suppose you look back at some of the early videos and the ones that you're doing now, and obviously the first ones were very DIY, but it got you going. How long were you kind of DIY for before you started getting someone in to help you?
Yeah, it's it's funny you mention that because I had no background in video or anything like that. My sister-in-law went to school for videography, so I would ask her questions here and there, just enough to kind of get me by. But most of it was just clicking around an iMovie on the Mac and just trying to figure it out. But yeah, most of those earlier videos, I would say for the first 4 years, I was pretty much doing the video stuff solo. I got some help photography wise because we have 3,700 products on our site. The photography is very committed to an e-commerce site. But as far as the photography goes, we got a little help before that. It was about 3 years I was doing that solo. So I was doing the photography and the video myself. I had to kind of just teach myself in the early days. Definitely, we made a huge leap in terms of production quality, both the videos and the photography, once I actually got some people on my team that kind of knew what they were doing. But, at the time, it was either I was using stock images provided to us from our distributor, the manufacturer, which was not very good,
Yeah.
or I could take my own, and at least it would be somewhat consistent, even if it wasn't amazing photography.
And
that was
also
enough to get us going.
An original look and feel.
Yes, yeah, to get a cohesive feel. Because, if you go to a website and every picture is sized differently and it's got different backgrounds, it feels very, very slapped together. It doesn't feel very cohesive. So at least I was able to get it consistent. And then once we got actual photographers who knew what they were doing, they were able to get the nice on the white background and do some environmental photography that could really convey the right feel for the products and get a level of sophistication that we have now. But, for the first several years, it was kind of like done is better than perfect. So I would just really worry about more producing something and getting it out there and just moving on to the next thing because the alternative was nothing.
Yeah, I like that. Done is better than perfect. And so many people they won't put anything out until it's absolutely perfect and then nothing ever happens. And I think, a lot of getting things done. I mean, while it's a lot more polished today than what it was,
yeah.
I don't think you've lost any of the inherent, the storytelling, the content's still, just as top notch and that sort of humanity around the business, you can still feel that. So, your enthusiasm still comes across, which is the main thing.
Thank you. And, it's interesting because I have been there. I started out, literally, I'm not joking now, the amount of viewership that we get on YouTube in about a 4-day span is equivalent to we got that entire first year that I was producing videos. So it's definitely, an accelerating curve in terms of viewership and comments and likes and shares and all that quality engagement. So it's going to take time to build it up. It's a lot of time. Video is very much of a long game. I know we like to produce something and get likes on it right away and feel really good about it, but you really have to have an extremely long-term lens when it comes to video. The payoff is definitely there. We have really built this whole company on its marketing strategy around video because you're able to see my enthusiasm. I'm able to teach people how to use fountain pens, troubleshoot them, really fall in love with them, and that kind of builds that loyalty and it really builds trust with our customers, and that runs really, really deep. In a way that a flash sale or a 50 cents lower on price isn't going to steal somebody away because they feel so loyal because of the time that we put into making these videos. So it's over time, it's really paid off. But man, for that first several years, I would say it was an unbelievable commitment of time and effort that if I didn't have that long-term lens in mind, I probably would have stopped doing it because it was so much effort and the payoff wasn't quite there in the beginning. And I think that's something for anybody that's working on video needs to keep that in mind. It takes a lot of time to produce, and you have to really kind of cut yourself off at some point to not overproduce. You got to really speak to your audience and recognize that the content is really the king. People will understandably sacrifice on the production quality if your content is strong enough. You know what I mean? Yeah. So if you're in a space where you're talking about iPhone releases or digital cameras or something like that, it's going to be tough because there's a lot of really good people covering that stuff. So you got to have both the content and the quality. But if you're in a niche market like I am with fountain pens where there's not a lot of competition, especially in the video space, people will forgive you for not having something highly produced if you really know what you're talking about and you're there.
And they can hear you, and they can hear and at least see what you're talking about. I guess the other thing too is that when it comes to particularly video, but all content, is it's that body of work, because people can drop in, it's not. I know that you talk seasonal in terms of sales, but when people discover that they want fountain pens, or they're interested in ink or wax seals or notepads or something, that could be at any time of the year, and they could find you at any level, and you've got enough content there now to take them all the way through. So it's evergreen content, I suppose is what I'm trying to say. A lot of your stuff doesn't really date. Yeah,
that's been part of our strategy too. We have. It would be different if it was something like, I'll go back to the iPhone as an example, where it's people really aren't looking at iPhone 3 videos anymore. It's you got to stay current with it, right? But it's a little bit different in my industry. I have the advantage of having a little longer lifespan of the products that I talk about. So I try to shoot the videos and everything in a way that I know it's going to last as long as possible. So sometimes I'll not get really detailed on the pricing of it, or I'll have to say a caveat of like, here's the pricing at the launch of this video, because I know 3 years from now the price could go up, and the video, when you watch it, the price might be different, or check the website for pricing. I'm trying to keep that stuff in mind. But the evergreen content is really good because you're right, like especially if you're on something like YouTube where there's a good amount of traffic that's just literally suggested videos that people are stumbling upon my content either from another one of my videos or from something completely unrelated. I think we've all gone on those YouTube rabbit trails where we ultimately the whole internet ends up at cat videos, right? But if you spend enough time there, but if you don't quite make it to cat videos, there might be fountain pens in there somewhere, and people will stumble across it. And even if it's a 4-year-old video where I'm, 40 pounds heavier and my head is shaved and, I look very different, it's still relevant enough where they receive that good content, and then they'll stumble across other things. And now we've got over 1,100 different videos, that have all stayed pretty relevant. I think I've only had to take down maybe 10 videos ever, just because we've either discontinued entire product lines that aren't relevant anymore, or a product has changed so much where we've had to discontinue it and kind of update it. But most of it has really been able to stay relevant.
So let's look at video, because we'll look at what's working for you, but obviously, you've highlighted that is video. So you've got such a full range now though, because, and your YouTube channel is very much like a playlist. So I've got some stats here. I thought I'd better write these down. So you've got 57,500 subscribers as of this point, and a collective 12.5 million views, which is not too shabby. The flagship video that you do is Goulet Q&A open forum, where people ask questions, you answer them. Hardcore utility-based content that's useful, helpful, and obviously involves your community and customers and people who are prospective customers. They average, it looks to me like around 4,000 to 5,000 each in terms of views, and they rack up the views quite quickly. If you go back some episodes, they've got more, obviously, because they've been in, online longer. But it looks like people are waiting for it when it comes out, and they jump onto it straight away. So it is like literally a weekly TV show. Walk us through that. What was the thinking behind it, and when do you obviously record at the same time every week now, and it comes out on a Friday? Does it Friday? Yeah.
It comes out on noon on Friday, pretty much every Friday.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because I'm naturally just myself. I'm not naturally an incredibly scheduled person. As the company has grown and I've had to have a little more regular schedule, and I have young kids and stuff like that, there's advantages in my life to scheduling things, but naturally I'm kind of a open, somewhat chaotic individual. So in the earlier days of the videos, when it was really just me, it was like I would finish a video and get it out and whatever. I had no rhyme or reason to the rhythm of videos that I would put out, and that was fine. Again, it was done is better than perfect. At least if I get it out, it's 3:00 in the morning on a Tuesday, who cares? At least it's published and I can move on and work on the next thing. Boom, 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 get it out. Now I have a team, so any content, especially that involves me and trying to plan around my schedule, because literally, I'm not joking, I'll have anywhere between 10 and 15 meetings a day. with various people. I could have some offsite. I could have some, with Skype interviews and things with people halfway across the world and stuff. It's cool. I like that, but it does complicate things a bit. So because I have a team of 7 people and myself to factor in, there's benefit to having a little more regular content. So something like Q&A that we ground every week, we call it one of our pillars. It's like a weekly pillar. So internally, there's kind of 2 lenses. There's the internal and the external that, our fans and viewers will have. So internally, it helps us to kind of keep a rhythm on the team because Q&A, it's very involved. We solicit questions on multiple different platforms. We then compile all those questions. I'll go through and I'll look through the questions for that week. We usually post the questions out on Monday on Instagram, Facebook, you name it. We compile all the questions, usually anywhere between 30 and 50 questions in a week. And then I'll sort through those questions, pick kind of the top 7 to 10, depending on how long I think it's going to take me to talk about them. And then usually Wednesday afternoon is pretty much when I shoot it. That tends to work out pretty well for us. Then Thursday, through most of the morning, my videographer can, edit it, and then it exports for the rest of Thursday. We get it uploaded, and then we can publish on Friday.
And so the show notes are crazy. Like, they're so detailed.
Yeah. Well, those show notes are actually my bullet points that I use when I talk through the video. Okay. I found that to work pretty well. So rather than my team having to watch through an hour-long video every week, I find that it helps me to just, as I'm going through and picking the questions, I go through and I just bullet out a few things that I use as talking points for the video. So those are actually literally the notes that I'm looking at as I'm recording the video. So most of it's somewhat off the cuff, but there's a couple of bullet points just because there's a lot of technical information and stuff that I want to cover. And sometimes there's hyperlinks and things like that I want to have. It just helps me if I have those notes in there, and then it really benefits people, especially because in the earlier days, people were asking us a lot to transcribe, the notes and all that, and it's an hour long. I can't transcribe an hour-long thing every week, but having those show notes in there really helps people if they just kind of want to scan the content, especially on the blog, they can do that, and it's made things a lot easier.
And then, you do acknowledge the people who have asked the questions.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we'll say what platform they're from and put their handle on there. And, I abbreviate the last name if it comes from Facebook, just because I don't want to deal with, giving away more information that somebody might be comfortable with, because Facebook's kind of different than the rest of the platforms in that way. But then, externally, it works out really well because, like you mentioned, it's pretty much people work it into the routine. And it's been very interesting because, I've done things like Periscope and some live stuff where I've talked to people about kind of what do they use Q&A for. They really work it into their weekly ritual. So, it might be people at work or college students or whoever where, it's on Friday. So most of the week is gone. A lot of people watch it on Friday night, so it'll come out on noon on Friday. There's usually not a lot of views, a couple hundred views Friday afternoon, but then, Friday night or maybe into Saturday morning, that's when everybody is, they have a routine where they maybe gather up all their pens that they've used during the week, and they'll clean out their pens as they're listening to the Q&A, or as they're cooking dinner on Friday night, they're listening to it, or, as they're kind of winding down, they're going to bed on Friday night, they'll have that in the background and kind of fall asleep. It's interesting, just the routine that people have said that they work into it. And, I try to keep that in mind now because especially that Q&A, it really is kind of ritualistic. And so if I ever have to cancel it or skip one, I really keep in mind that like, oh man, I'm like really affecting like thousands of people's routines by doing this. So I need to make sure that it's really intentional when I'm doing that.
I guess the other thing too there is that with the questions, so you ask for questions. These aren't just random questions. You're actually going out and asking your community, your online community, which is pretty big, what do they want to ask this week? And I was trying to get whether there's actually a theme, but there doesn't appear to be. I think you probably try to batch them the best you can, but it's not thematic in that regard.
Yeah, I started out, if you go back and look at some of the archive, I mean, granted, we're almost 150 Q&As into this now, but if you look at the first probably 20 or 30, I used to ask for specific themes, say, hey, I'm going to talk about, ink in this one. So ask me all your ink questions. That was fine for a while, and I was able to package it up like that. But then the problem was, okay, I was getting to more and more specific kind of prompts where I was having a hard time getting, good quality questions and wasn't getting as much feedback. And so I just kind of opened it up, and that seemed to be able to keep a more kind of continuous flow of questions. So rather than having one single Q&A that's focusing on all things pen or ink or a specific brand or something like that, like I did in the early days when I first tested it, I now just have it open, and then I try to group the questions by pens or ink or paper or troubleshooting or personal questions people might ask me, and I'll just kind of group it in that given Q&A based on the quality of the question that I feel like answering and how well I feel I can answer it. But I try to keep it fairly loose just because if I try to put too many restrictions on it, then it becomes difficult for me to produce every week. And I would rather keep it a little looser and still keep it going than try to put too many constraints on it and then make it really laborious to put out every week. And, I find that the way that we've done it has really worked out pretty well.
It's certainly working for you. And I guess what I'm noticing now is you're repurposing. They're hour long. It's up to 55 to over an hour long every week when I tell people about this. And I talk about you, and I do a lot of talks around the country in Australia, and I talk about you. And there are always closet pen people. I get them to put their hand up every time, and people do. So hopefully you get some business whenever I talk. People go and visit your site. But
thank you.
But the Q&A slices is now where you're taking slices, obviously, literally, off the bigger Q&A package, hour-long video, and that's more bite-sized content for people to use. So that's a good thing too? That works for you?
Yeah, what had happened with that is we had done probably I'm trying to remember exactly when we started the slices. It might have been when we had around 80 episodes or something like that, which if you think, okay, 80 episodes, maybe 10 or maybe more questions per episode, that's a lot of different questions. And of course, now with almost 150, you're talking a lot of different questions. And, it's not just my media team that's putting out content and doing engagement on the social platforms, but we have a whole customer service department here as well. We call them our customer care team. And that's a team of 9 people. So that's a good amount of content that we have that can look to actually service our customers who are accessing us through email, live chat, phone calls, not necessarily through social media. So in addition to being a kind of a marketing channel, it's actually a customer service kind of thing as well. And it serves on multiple fronts like that really beneficially, because not only am I getting to kind of reach out to new people and kind of bring them in as the proprietor of the business, if you will, but then my team can take these slices on individual kind of specific questions and access them. And we kind of share them internally. Whenever we come out with new ones, we say, hey guys, here's slices on, these 3 questions this week. And we don't slice everything up. It's maybe 2 or 3 to 4 questions out of a given Q&A each week that we think might be good to kind of, keep fresh and keep on people's minds. So if I ask a specific question about troubleshooting a certain type of pen, for example, hey, I'm having trouble with this pen, what's going on? And so I'll answer that in much more detail, and then we'll slice that up. And then when my customer service team can get a question about that pen, they can then pull that slice, share it with the customer. They can watch maybe a 5-minute segment on it instead of an entire hour-long Q&A that I did a year ago. They can get that specific question answered for them in video form, and they're just over the moon.
And if one person's got a question, the chances are that there's many others have got a similar question, and you'll be picking the ones that people ask the most. Which brings me to probably the overarching theme. When we last spoke, and you said something which really has resonated with me, and it's stuck with me ever since. And we're talking about your philosophy and things like that. Around marketing and doing business. Sure. And you said how can I help the most people? And your content and social and everything else you're doing is driven around how can I help the most people? Is that still relevant?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, the coolest thing in my mind about living in this era that we're living in and having the internet and being able to literally, we're across the world right now, having a live recorded conversation that we're going to be sharing out with however many tens of thousands of people or who knows how many. And the fact that we can do it basically for free. It's an opportunity that's just never been possible in human history before. So I know that I would not have the opportunity to do what I do if it weren't for being in this period of history right now. So first off, I'm super ever grateful and thankful just for being here at this time. But then, when I think about the niche industry that I'm in, fountain pens, fountain pens have been around for 150 years, rounding, of course. But it's been around for a while, and fountain pens have had their ups and downs. For all intents and purposes, it should be obsolete because there are so many other methods of communication right now, that no one uses a fountain pen unless they want to. It's not a commodity, So the fact that there are people out there seeking out to learn more about this it's a privilege and an honor to serve people that are that passionate to overcome all of the barriers that are required in a hobby like this. I view that as a tremendous opportunity and a tremendous responsibility. So the fact that I can marry the two of having this kind of old, outdated technology, if you will, of the fountain pen, for communication purposes, but then marry that to some kind of the latest and greatest of technology. It's this paradox that I'm completely fascinated by. And the fact that I can do that in this age, in this era, at such a low cost of financial resources anyway, huge cost of time and commitment. But I view that as just an opportunity that's too good to pass up. And I think there's opportunities for like that all over the place. And any niche market has the opportunity to do this right now. There's online communities that gather up around every single possible hobby and passion that you could imagine. And they form in these little pockets all over the internet. And then people who are really into them can publish content around it, really cultivate a community around whatever interest or products that there are. Mine happens to be fountain pens. And you can serve that community in a direct way with people all over the world. It's incredible. And the fact that I can build a business around it too is even better. The fact that I can serve as a retailer and kind of a content provider is it's just, to me, I can't imagine anything better.
Yeah, I love the irony of selling fountain pens online. It's certainly not lost on me. So with that, and that's to me a very, and that's probably the way that I think too, that I'd prefer that sort of holistic approach. I think where the world's going now are too many people trying to game the system and drive super amounts of traffic and talk funnels and conversions and all of that. And I get it and I understand why that talk comes up. But you're sort of a bit more of the opposite way, but getting incredible results as, because of it. What can you put it down to? I mean, and that doesn't mean that you don't use best practice. It doesn't mean that you don't do analytics. How do you face that side of things? At the start, you probably just did stuff, and then as you get a little bit more sophisticated in the production, obviously there's that back end and the analytics. How important is that side of things to you now to really improve your performance?
Yeah, so for me, because I don't have a marketing background per se, I'm not driven by the analytics. I don't look at it and say, how can I game the system? How can I, how do I optimize this, based on the numbers? That stuff's fine, but the more that I dive into that stuff, the more you can really kind of read into things however you want to read into them. There's 12 different ways to look at all the analytics to get kind of the story that you want to tell yourself. So that to me doesn't matter as much. I look at it almost kind of retroactively to tell me, how did I do? Let me see what the data says. Okay, that kind of validates what my gut was telling me. Or, that is kind of different. Let me dive into that a little bit. Oh, okay, well, let me make some tweaks. It doesn't drive my behavior.
Right.
And admittedly, I'm probably a little behind on a lot of the metrics and the analytics side of things because I'm such a pragmatist and such a I'm so driven by kind of the engagement side of things. And I don't mean engagement in terms of conversion rates and engagement, likes and all that kind of stuff. I'm talking about actual feedback from individual people that are posting and commenting. That I care way more about than what any numbers are telling me. Now, of course, I'm running a business and I have to have the proper financials and all of those kind of things. But that, again, even that if you do all the right things, that stuff will kind of take care of itself. If you do the right things and don't get too selfish, don't get too crazy or too stupid, that stuff will pretty much take care of itself as long as you are providing fantastic, excellent work. Yep. And if you're providing amazing content and you spend the majority of your time trying to serve your community in the absolute best way possible, everything else really will kind of just take care of itself, unless there's some other crazy factor going on, like some huge economic downturn or something. We're all subject to some things that are outside of our control. But, if you're looking at the metrics and you're kind of ignoring your community, the actual people that are there, and you're focusing more on the numbers, you got it kind of flipped backwards. You know what I mean? You can look at the numbers as a way to kind of validate that what you're doing is right, but you don't want to ignore people to have a bunch of numbers telling you, because it's not eyeballs or views or conversions, it's people. It's all people, and the better you're connecting with people and serving them and providing value, the better you're going to do in the end. It's a little bit more of a long game that you have to view, but you're not trying to trick people into clicking onto your link so that you can kind of manipulate them into buying your stuff. Now, granted, I'm in a business where it's fountain pens. There's a pretty big investment when you get into, it's kind of a conversion getting into fountain pens, because it's a whole different way of writing. And, it's typically not just you buy one pen and that's it. You really kind of get involved and it becomes kind of a whole lifestyle change. So for me, it's not like, it's not like a single major purchase. Like if you're buying a house, you're not buying a house every 6 months, so it's going to be different for me than it would be in somebody else's industry, where maybe all you really care about is grabbing that attention at that moment. Like if you're a funeral home, but even still, I still believe there's a long game. And I think that if you really run an excellent business and you really take the right approach towards your marketing, eventually, even if you lose out on that initial click or that initial sale, it will, in the end, work out to be better in your advantage doing things the right way.
So when it comes to, you use the word community a lot in serving your audience, and you truly have got a community. I think a lot of brands and, businesses say we're getting in touch with our community, but there is no community really, because community's two-way, like it's involvement, it's engagement. If someone reached out to you, you'd get back to them. They do reach out to you. They do talk about you in a positive way on the channels. And I guess the Q&A is a perfect example, is that you put it out there to get questions and you actually get questions. So, and that's 150 episodes worth. So, how many channels have you got? What's the Goulet Pen Company social platform now? So you've got at the heart of everything is your blog.
Yeah.
And that's I dread to think how many articles you put on there now. You've got a
16, 1700, somewhere around there.
Yeah. And they're very meaty now. They're probably, I don't know, there's a lot more pictures I've noticed now, and a lot more professional pictures. So they're very meaty posts. So you've got the blog, which is sort of the heart of everything. Twitter is obviously good for you, particularly in customer service. Facebook, you've got?
Yep, we're on Facebook as well. Twitter is actually probably one of our weaker platforms, believe it or not, because Twitter is kind of a fire hose these days. It's very noisy. So we do get some questions and some engagement on that, but it's very fickle, in terms of the time of day and how much engagement we'll get. So Twitter has kind of been an evolution. It's definitely been reflective of kind of just where Twitter is in general. It's very noisy and it's kind of not really on the rise. We've seen that to be kind of the case, not like Instagram, which is like, skyrocketing.
So how many followers on Instagram have you got?
Almost as many as YouTube. I think we're at about 56,000 on Instagram.
Yeah, fantastic.
So it's pretty big, and it makes sense because it's a very visual thing.
Of course, we have
amazing photography. Yeah. So and Instagram has very much been on the rise. I mean, I think at the beginning of this year we had around 25,000, and now we've more than doubled that just in this year. Yeah. So it's been pretty intentional and been pretty impressive. And we do giveaways and things like that to really help to get people to talk about us on Instagram. But that's, YouTube and Instagram are definitely big ones. The blog is really, that was originally kind of the catch-all for everything. We do blog posts, we do written posts. We would embed YouTube videos into the blog post to kind of catch everything. And now the blog is almost like kind of a diary for our business. We've been on it from the very beginning. And now, whenever we do product releases, whenever we have major events that go on, we have kind of this whole history of anything that we've ever done in our company through the blog. So it's kind of this big storytelling that we've been able to do, which is kind of cool.
And the thing is, sorry, I think the thing there too is that you repurpose. Have you got a strategy for each platform?
We do, yeah, and that helps. What we end up doing is we have, several different what we call community coordinators. So they're kind of focusing on different platforms. So they'll backfill and cover for each other, but we really kind of let them head up individual platforms. So we've got Madigan. She covers Instagram, and she writes a lot of blog posts as well. Lydia is actually monitoring blog comments, and she manages Facebook. Colin manages YouTube and Twitter, and then Pinterest kind of gets passed around between all of them. But I think Madigan's kind of heading it up at the moment. But so that's kind of how the breakdown works, and that's really the main ones. I was doing Periscope for a while. I've been kind of cool on Periscope for a bit. I have a personal Snapchat account I've been playing around with. We don't have a company one, so we're doing a lot of experimentation all the time because, as you know, the platforms are always kind of evolving and changing, and now Instagram live stories are coming out, and that's going to change and impact some things. And we're all, I'm very experimental, so I don't mind jumping on kind of as myself to a platform early to kind of test it out and figure it out. Okay, is there really going to be something here? We'll do it for a while. Okay, man, it's a little early for our company. Our customers are, not quite this bleeding edge, so we won't do anything with it yet, but maybe, if we see it's got some legs, we'll jump onto it. That's kind of how it was with Instagram. I signed up for an Instagram account for our business back in 2011 and didn't do anything with it for like 3 years, and then once it started to kind of become a little more mainstream and catch on, okay, now I see we can do something. Once we had, photography that was worth posting on there.
Yeah.
Back when I was doing the photography, it wasn't worth posting on Instagram. But so we'll be kind of fluid with that. But, we're on Facebook too. That's pretty decent for us. And yeah, that's kind of the main channels that we're on at the moment.
I want to talk about Facebook too, because obviously the organic reach has been throttled. How are you finding organic reach for you guys?
Yeah, it ebbs and flows depending on, it's definitely not what it once was. We're talking a small percentage of our actual followership will actually get through organic reach. So we'll still post things on there, and sometimes things will get picked up and carried a little further.
Yep.
And we'll boost some stuff here and there. I haven't done a lot with like dark posts and things like that. That's kind of a level of sophistication we haven't quite gotten into yet on Facebook. But we'll boost some things. We'll share other people's content, which always gets picked up a little heavier. So we'll post things on there, but it's not what it used to be. But then again, it's free, so you can't really complain but so much. Yeah. But we'll pay every now and then, especially if it's something that's very kind of sales driven and kind of timely.
Yep.
We'll post some things, we'll boost it a little bit and give it some oomph. But that's definitely the way Facebook is going. So we're talking more about, okay, in 2017, is our strategy going to be more invest financially more in Facebook? Just, I really can't complain. It's like anything else. If there's a lot of people there and there's a good return and people can be well served by putting yourself there for them, then it's worth the investment. I used to be much more hardlined about that. It was almost a pride issue of, I don't want to pay for Facebook. Why would I pay for Facebook? But let's get real. If it's going to benefit people, if it's going to serve your business well, just pay it and then, experiment.
It is what it is. But I do notice, I noticed once that Rachel, your wife, she just put a simple couple of lines up on Facebook saying, I'm using this ink this weekend. What are you guys using? Breaking every rule of Facebook, no visuals, whatever, and oh my gosh, the amount, you had hundreds of replies, hundreds.
Yeah.
It just kept going on and on and on, and people are then talking with each other, and that's when I can say that you have a real community, because people help each other out and they talk with each other. It's not, you're a facilitator of it, but you don't necessarily have to be in the conversation. That conversation goes on around you on your platform, which I think is pretty cool.
It is very cool. Yeah, we'll try to mix stuff in there like that. Sometimes it's good to break the rules a little bit just to make sure that, you're not getting stale and stagnant on your own stuff. Even if you're doing everything by the best practices, if all your stuff looks the same, people kind of become numb to it a little bit. It's good to mix things up a little every now and then, and especially with that type of stuff. Now, we have a very engaged community. I mean, my goodness, they're very engaged. So when you post questions, especially if they are getting to share their opinion about something, and especially if it's, hey, this versus that, what's your opinion? Any type of question like that, that creates tons of engagement, and then it gets fun. And obviously, the more organic, natural engagement you get like that on Facebook, the more likely it is to kind of get shared out too. So it kind of gets picked up. And we found that for our community anyway, Friday afternoons tend to be a really good time. I guess everybody's kind of getting bored at work and they're getting ready for the weekend. So we post that engaging kind of questions, on something like Facebook or Twitter on a Friday afternoon. Really spikes up quite a bit more so than say a Tuesday morning. So we'll try to test things like that every now and then and see what we can learn from it.
And you mentioned Periscope before and live video. So, Instagram's going to have a live element. You got YouTube Live now that's, sort of Hangouts. I try and work out where Google Hangouts fit in with Hangouts on Air fit in with YouTube Live, but you can do it through obviously YouTube. Yeah. Facebook is obviously almost the category killer, and then you've got Periscope, which is, one of the granddaddies of it, and still kicking along. But it's an extra app, isn't it? It's an extra app that's you have to have. You've got Twitter, and then you've got the extra app. Whereas obviously Facebook's Live is native, and it doesn't disappear. Which is you go to that effort of doing video, and you don't really. You want it to stick around a little bit. But how are you finding? I mean, I like the live element from the here and now, that live in the that moment in the moment, take people behind the scenes. How have you found it when you were experimenting, and what's your view on where it's going, and will you be doing more next year, given that? And which one would you do it on? You have different phones. You have all of these phones line. I'm doing live, Facebook Live. I'm doing Instagram Live. I'm doing YouTube all at once.
Well, and that's just the thing is I think the biggest thing to keep in mind, especially for your audience, is you can't just pick one thing and say, this is the thing and I'm going to learn it and only do it and I'll never do anything else. It's very fluid. Like the pace at which things are changing on all these social media platforms is almost exhausting. So you have to be really experimental and you have to be willing to try a lot of different things. And not everything is going to work for your community. Some things like for me, Snapchat, my community is really not there on Snapchat, but Instagram, they're there. They weren't there 3 years ago, but they're there now. So you have to experiment and try different things and see kind of where it's at. For me, Periscope was really good when it first came out. I was actually debating Meerkat or Periscope. And then I kind of, as soon as I heard that, Twitter was buying Periscope, I was like, okay, Periscope is going to win out. So that's when I really went in on Periscope. And I did Periscope solid for about a year. So I picked it up in like April of last year. In 2015. So I got on it really pretty early and did that for quite a while. And I got a pretty good following on there, very loyal. I was doing broadcasts. I did about 140 different Periscope broadcasts that averaged, 30 to 40 minutes a piece. But what happened is I was kind of leading it and Rachel and I were doing it together. And it kind of ended up interfering more with our personal life because, she ended up getting pregnant and we had 2 kids already and it was just exhausting for us to kind of do our late night Periscope sessions. So we kind of cooled off on that a little bit. And then we ended up losing the baby, unfortunately. And that just kind of emotionally, we were just exhausted from that whole experience. So we really just kind of cooled it off. And that's when Periscope started to kind of deflate a little bit. And, even just people that I was talking to in the community, they were like, we had a lot of followers, but they were all turning off their notifications. So they weren't really coming on anymore, So even still, it was like really hot for a year and then it kind of moved on. But, we have a history within, at least me and Rachel, within our company of experimenting with live video. We were doing live video 7 years ago, back on Ustream and Justin TV, back when it was not easy to do live video. It's a lot easier now. I mean, they would break up all the time. But still, the coolest thing, I think, about doing live video is that engagement. And the best thing about live video is you get immediate engagement. Yeah. I mean, the production value is you just have to take it down a notch on live video because the quality is not there, especially for us. We sell, nice pens. And if I'm trying to show you the detail it's really kind of lost. You can't see it in live video like you can on some of our higher produced stuff that we put on YouTube and pictures on Instagram and stuff. So you have to make up for it with personality and engagement. So the fact that you can have like a live streaming chat where you can, it kind of goes back to the whole Q&A concept where people can be asking questions. Or what would happen half the time is I would be like, hey guys, I got this product, it's a new bullet journal here. That's the official bullet journal. Let me show you some features. And people are asking questions as I'm going through it. And they're like asking a question, be like, oh, dang, I never even thought of that. You know what? That's a good point. We should put something in our product description that describes that. Okay, cool. I'm glad you brought that up. Oh, does it come in this other color? Yeah, it does. Are you guys interested? Oh my gosh, everybody's interested in the chat. You know what? Maybe we should pick up that other color. We were talking about not doing it, but it might be there. So like for us as a retailer, it was fantastic. It's like a live focus group that we would have for the products that we're looking to carry. They feel incredibly engaged because they're like, oh my God, like they get to impact the products that we're offering to them. And it's incredibly, like the trust and the personality, and they really feel like they're Skyping with a friend, in these types of settings. So I'm really drawn to kind of the live video format. As it is right at this moment, I'm not doing anything live video, but I've got that itch to do it again. And I think the Instagram live stories is going to scratch that itch in a lot of big ways, even on my personal channel as well as on our company channel. And I'm talking about YouTube and Facebook Live, and I've experimented with some of these before, but I haven't really dove in yet because it is a big commitment of time. But I think I'm going to start to get that itch again early in 2017. You'll probably see me dipping in on different channels before we kind of settle on one that we kind of stake and do. But it all comes down to how realistic is it for you to keep it up. The thing about live video is you got to be quick on the draw. You know what I mean? You got to be engaging. You have to remember to smile. Some people, they're just not great at video, so it's really tough. And then you have to make sure you're kind of censoring whatever it is you're saying. Me, I'm running a business. I've got a lot of employees. I've got all these various things that as I'm talking, I have to run through my head and go, okay, let me make sure not to say this or that or the other thing. I have this pen that I want to show. I know there's another version that's coming out 3 months from now, but I'm not supposed to talk about it yet. So let me segment that off in my brain. It's a lot of different things that you got to remember. Yeah. And then as people are peppering you with questions through the chat, you have to be thinking about all this stuff real time. So it really takes kind of a mental wherewithal to be able to kind of handle that. And the busier the chat gets, the more complicated that is. But it's a lot of fun, I think. And so it's fun to get in there and do that every now and then. And I would encourage anybody that really kind of likes that excitement and likes that engagement to try live video, because it's really fun to do.
Yep. Awesome. I just want to finish up, Brian, if I may, to talk a little bit more about, how you've been obviously on the, out in the front there. Rachel has always been thereabouts. We see her at times, but you've been there more often. But now you're profiling people. You're taking people behind the velvet rope of the business. There's now the team's getting bigger. I've seen the profiles. We haven't even talked about the e-newsletter, which I think the last time we spoke, you said is still probably your most powerful tool.
It's very powerful, yeah.
It's and I subscribe and I see the quality that goes into it, and But you've been profiling. Well, you've got this sort of thing called a Goulet life, which is what it's like to work at Goulet. You've got videos that take people behind the scenes, and you're profiling your people. How important have you found that?
Yeah, I think, when you get into that kind of stuff, especially for a retail-based business like us, that's where you really have to take the metrics and just kind of throw them out the window, because how do I tie somebody watching a video about my team or about what it's like to work here and say, I'm going to sell more pens like that? It's just, that's not the point. And so you have to kind of get that out of your head. For me, it's about kind of building that trust and kind of, like you said, it's kind of lifting the veil or opening behind the velvet rope. It's giving kind of like that VIP access. And for me, what I think it helps to serve is kind of that, like that small town, mom and pop kind of store where the owner and you can go in and talk and you can ask them how their kids are doing. And it's just, it's not as, kind of corporate or kind of shrouded as most online retail companies tend to be. One thing I never understood, especially when I started out, and it was just me and Rachel, and we had our baby, and that was it. And like we were scrappy, and we were trying to make it. I never understood why there were other retailers who were small, where it was just one or two people, and they would try to mask their website to sound like they were some kind of big company, and they would say we this and corporate this, and I'm like, why in the world are you depersonalizing your stuff when you have such a cool personal story to tell? So as we've grown, it kind of stems out of that, right? So it's all about, as Rachel and I have kind of told the story of how we've grown this business, we're now sharing more of our team as much as they're comfortable with. Everybody's got a different level of comfort. We don't force our team to share any more than they're comfortable with. But as we are growing, we're allowing and kind of inviting our own team to share a little bit more and showing a little bit of behind the scenes, because it kind of makes you feel more comfortable, and it makes you feel more loyal and more trusted and more invited, into kind of growing with us. And so we've got people literally that have been following us for years now that really feel like they're kind of a part of our family. And that to me is really cool. And it's not just about, am I going to sell more pens as a result? That would be nice and great if it works out that way, but it's a little bit bigger than that. It's kind of getting a little bit more, not to get too soft on you here, but it's a little bit more about just like, are we kind of better in humanity by being a business, right? Like, are we running it in a way that's actually adding value to people's lives? And if we are doing that, I believe financially we're going to be better off. But, I just feel more rewarded running a company where people just enjoy interacting with us, whether it's vendors, manufacturers, our own team, our mail carriers, our people watching our videos, you name it, everybody interacts us with. If they're feeling better as a result of it, I feel like that's a pretty darn rewarding thing. And I get excited about contributing to that every day in my own kind of personal work ethic.
Do you notice that now your profile has grown within the industry, I suppose there is a fountain pen industry per se.
Sure.
I noticed you've done the mini doco when you did the behind the scenes of, you went to the factory of Pilot Pens, was it?
Yeah. I went to the U.S. distributor for Pilot Pens. Their main factory is in Japan.
Oh, okay.
And I've been invited. We'll see. That would be a huge trip.
Yeah, but is that something that, now that you're out and about, you are a media channel in its own right, and obviously, pen manufacturers are going to know that. Have you found that your influence has grown, you're being invited to these sorts of things, or you're getting access to things like this to even report on, so to speak?
Yeah. Well, what the ironic thing is, when I actually went to visit Pilot USA. So there's several major Pilot's a very large company, close to $1 billion. So they have distributorships set up in Europe and, in the United States and a couple other places around the world. So the one that they have in Jacksonville, Florida here is the one that we went to. So very large, for several 100,000 square feet. I don't know if that means anything to most of your audience. I can't quite translate that to kilometers, but you get what I'm saying. We went there. It's a fairly large facility. They said that we were the first retailer that they've ever invited that actually wanted to go. So, and I was so dumbfounded by it. They've invited other people they've been working with for 20 years, but they just never went. And I was like, okay, I don't get it. So just even still, you would think it would be so obvious that people would take advantage of these opportunities, but even still, a lot of people aren't. So that's why I'm encouraged actually by that, because I think right now it could be easy for anybody who's watching this or anybody who's thinking like, man, Instagram is like already hot and there's already all these other people doing it. You could come up and start doing it in like 9 months, be one of the biggest things out there. Like, just because somebody else started doing it first, yes, you sometimes get a first mover advantage, but just because you're a little bit late to the game doesn't mean you can't place a significant stamp in your little niche. So don't be discouraged by that. There's still plenty of opportunity out there that other people might just be like, no, I'm too tired, or the timing's not right for me, or I don't want to get in. I don't really trust Facebook. They changed the algorithm on me and I don't really want to pay for ads. Well, you could go out and start paying for ads and be the first one out there and go and destroy everybody that's already been in the market for 15 years. They're still ripe with opportunity. That's kind of the advantage of things continually changing all the time, is people don't like to change that much. Yep. So if you like to change, or you can be the first one kind of into that new change that's happened, the challenge then is after you've been doing it for 5 or 7 years, which is where I'm at, you have to still be willing to change. And I'm getting kind of tired and I'm like, Okay, do I really want to learn Instagram stories now? Okay, here we go. Back at it again.
Yeah.
But I'm excited by that. So, but after a while, I think it can be a little tiring. So there are people, even if they've been around for a while, doesn't mean you can't go in there and get after it.
Yeah, excellent advice. We'll leave it there. We have a saying in Australia, we'll pull up stumps, which is a cricket analogy. So if I said pull up stumps, you
Okay.
probably don't know what the heck I'm talking about. But
Learn something new every day.
I just want to thank you for being generous with your knowledge, and as I said, you've been doing it for 7 years now, and watching that journey, and it's just been fantastic. And I think people can just learn from you, and it's obviously that it's working, and truly are building a community of fans, followers, and advocates for your brand, which is pretty awesome. So
Well,
thank
thank
you,
you.
thanks for your time.
Absolutely. I appreciate it, Trevor. You're always a great one to keep an eye on as well. I appreciate you being willing to do this for me. Obviously, if anybody wants to check more out about what I'm doing, I'll give myself a plug here.
Yeah, do
So
please
I'm
do.
Goulet Pens. You can check out my website. We're on all the various channels we've already talked about. But feel free to reach out to my team, or you can reach out to me. I'm on Instagram personally at brian.goulet. You can feel free to comment on there, leave me some messages and stuff like that. That'd be really cool.
Excellent. Please do. Please, I always urge people to check out your website, because I can only ever say so much about it in a speech or in a presentation, and show a few screenshots. But it's not until you look at the depth, particularly of your Valentine's Day posts. They are amazing.
Yes.
That people will get a real feel for what the effort that you're putting in.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
No problem. Thank you.
Thanks.